Hi, everyone. My name is Lucy Kowacevic. I'm here with,
I'm Madeline Billings.
I'm Allison Weiland.
and today we're going to be giving you a virtual workshop on test anxiety. So we are counseling center paraprofessionals. So we're not trained clinicians, but we are trained in specific topics such as test anxiety and other topics in order to give this workshop to you today. So just to get started, we are going to go over some expectations. So this is basically just how this workshop is going to go down because it is virtual and maybe you never attended one before. You're able to pause this workshop at any time. You're able to pause to work on the worksheets because we will be showing you some of those. And also, we hope to have your full attention. Hopefully you're not in a very busy space, but if you are, that's okay too. And hopefully you also have a paper and pencil for the worksheets that will be needed.
So some of our objectives for this workshop is to learn about the different types of stress you may be experiencing right now and understand symptoms of test anxiety. Once we do that, we can move on to how to alleviate test anxiety both before, during, and after your exam, and also explore whether the format of your exam matters.
To get started, we're going to go over the different types of stress. So there's eustress, which is positive, and then there's distress, which is negative. Eustress is the kind of stress that motivates you and it focuses your energy. So this is the kind of stress that you feel when you get excited to do things, to get some work done. This is also a way to cope with other things. Kind of like if you're in a fight with a friend or something and you just distract yourself otherwise to get some work done. This is also exciting and it also improves performance. It's short term, whereas distress, which is negative, this can be short or long term. This type of stress causes anxiety and it feels unpleasant. So this is the kind of stress you feel when you're overwhelmed, you have too much on your plate, you're just not feeling great and very confident about the work you're putting into it. This also decreases performance.
Okay, so now we're going to go into exploring how you personally experience test anxiety. We're going to do a little 2-minute reflection. Before you pause the video, I just want you all to think about it, that it's important to figure out how you specifically experience it. So then if it's, very negatively stressful for you, you can explore how to maybe fix that or work on that. So think about what part of the exam, the test, is most anxiety provoking for you. Is it the time limit? Is it difficulty studying, focusing? Is it you comparing yourself to others? Is it your physical response of stress? Maybe if you're sweating a lot before the exam, during the exam, things like that. So just feel free to pause the video now for a few minutes. Just think about that. Maybe write it down so it's in your head. Okay, now that you've hopefully paused the video, we're just gonna go into how some people might experience stress.
So now that you've explored some of your own personal responses, these are some other symptoms that you might resonate with. These can be physical symptoms such as increasing your heart rate. You might feel nauseous or sweat a lot before or during the test. Test anxiety might make you feel like there's difficulty breathing as well. There's also certain cognitive symptoms you may experience, like you might have difficulty concentrating on your work, worrying a lot, doubting your own abilities, and also focusing a lot more on negatives such as negative thoughts or even negative feelings.
So before we get into how to alleviate this anxiety, we just want to share some statistics about it and let you know that if you are feeling this way, that you're not alone. So 16% of high school and college students experience high test anxiety, and 18% of high school and college students experience moderately high test anxiety. So these aren't very high. It's sort of a rare thing to experience, but it's also very common amongst high school and college kids. And just let you know that you're not alone.
Okay, so now we're getting down to Okay, so you find out you have kind of a little bit of test anxiety. So now, how do we alleviate test anxiety? How do we deal with it? So we're going to go into 3 stages: before the test, during the test, and then after the test. So with before the exam, this is when most people, I feel like, at least personally, when I experience test anxiety, this is where I get worked up. Sometimes before an exam, I'm like, wow, I did not study enough. I should have studied more. I don't know the content. Even though I studied for, I don't know, say 6 hours, I still believe that I don't know what I'm thinking. I don't know what the content is. So I did a little bit of research on this. And actually, there was this study done in 2019, I believe. Yes. And within the study, they kind of were having participants take exams, seeing, so like, how can we change this test anxiety? Because it's kind of ruining a lot of people's grades and their exam grades. So they tested it out. They found that when people were thinking positively of themselves and their capabilities before an exam, it does reduce test anxiety, and it actually improved their test scores. So before the exam, they would be like, I can do this. Like, I know this content. And just kind of building themselves up instead of bringing themselves down. I should have studied more. I don't know the content, things like that. So that's definitely something to be aware of, even though it might be a little silly before an exam to hype yourself up. Studies literally do prove that it can improve test scores and reduce test anxiety. And then there's also a priority matrix that you can do. We'll get into this in the next slide. I find this personally very helpful. And then also the night before an exam, a few nights before the exam. So you're studying, you know, gotta get adequate rest. Some people say 7 hours, they're good on that. But research shows that it's about 9 to 10 hours. That's what you should be getting for your body to really recharge. Fuel up. So when I say fuel up, I mean coffee by itself might not be a very nutritious breakfast. Maybe get some oatmeal, some fruit, whatever, you know, has really good nutrients to get your body going. And also arrive early. So I know nowadays we're currently in quarantine, so maybe you won't really arrive early to your exam, but maybe sitting down 30 minutes beforehand, just looking over a few notes, not really working yourself up, but just kind of chilling, you know, feel it out, feel your space out, and we'll go into that with the during. But now we're going to go back to the priority matrix. So with the priority matrix, you can feel free to pause the video now and make a little table like this with 2 on the top, 2 words on the top, important and not important, and then urgent and maybe not so urgent. So in this box, you know, you're thinking, oh, I have an exam tomorrow. I really need to do the study guide if you didn't do it yet. So that would go in urgent and important because you really got to get that done. But maybe, I don't know, playing video games the night before your exam would probably go into not urgent and not very important, just depending on you. Not saying this is where it should go, but you know, always varies person to person. So if you want to fill this out, feel free. If you have notebook, paper, or anything by you, yeah, just feel free to pause the video.
Okay, so once you figured out your strategies before your test, it's important immediately before your test to set up your space. So we included this in the during because it might be something you do the day of your exam. It's important to understand what materials do you need for your test. Do you personally like to use scratch paper and a pencil? Are you doing this only on your computer? Things like that. Make sure those are readily available in your space. Also, if you're taking it at home, things like having water by you might be helpful, just to care for yourself throughout your test. Setting up your space also may include reducing distractions and creating a calm environment to the best of your ability. Figure out where in your space you want to set up your materials, maybe on a desk. Creating a calm environment might include, talking to the people that you live with and making sure that they know that you're about to take an exam, or doing things preventatively to make sure that you're in the best position possible to focus. Creating a calm environment also might mean just calming yourself down before the test. Research shows that even just taking a few minutes to take a few deep breaths, center yourself. You might want to imagine that you're in a calm environment, wherever that may be, and use different visualization techniques beforehand. And then once you are taking your test, it's important to also just check in with yourself periodically, see if you are experiencing any of those anxiety symptoms, common things like noticing if your heart rate is going up, if you're sweating a lot, if you have muscle tension, especially in your face or your neck. You can notice these things and try to relax and moderate the symptoms during your test. Taking a minute to do activities like a couple deep breaths, while it might take time away from your test, it also can just prepare yourself to refocus and do the best that you can during your exam.
Now we're going to focus on some ways to feel better after the exam. So we want to teach you about cognitive reframing, which is kind of just a way to think positive. To define this, it is identifying and then changing the way situations, experiences, events, ideas, and/or emotions are viewed. So we're going to introduce to you now some unhelpful thinking habits. These are just things that you notice that you're thinking about when you're thinking negatively. So prediction, which is believing we know what is going to happen in the future. So just assuming things are going to go badly. Catastrophizing, which is imagining and believing that the worst thing possible will happen. And then critical self is putting ourselves down, blaming ourselves for events or situations that are not totally our responsibility. So kind of just blaming something went wrong and just blaming it all on yourself. So some steps to cognitive reframing are to learn about your thinking patterns. So educate yourself about some of these negative thinking patterns that may kind of increase your stress level. And then next is to notice your thoughts. So catch yourself when you're slipping into these unhelpful thinking habits that we just previously talked about in the before slide, and be aware of those thoughts and kind of like notice why you're thinking it, when you tend to think this way. And then next, challenge your thoughts. So when you notice these negative thoughts, it's kind of challenge yourself. So why are you thinking this way? Can you think another way? And then finally, replace your thoughts with the more positive thoughts. So an example would be in the next slide. Bailey is upset that they didn't make the basketball team. Well, instead of just being hard on themselves, they change their thought process around, and they think that this is a way for them to have more free time to practice and make the team next year.
So another helpful tip that you can use throughout this final period is to understand what type of exam you will be taking. So getting to know the format of your test, you can ask your instructor what it will look like and how much time you will have. This can include things like, will you have a whole day to take your test? Is there a multiple day period? Is there a time limit once you start the exam? Things like that can help you prepare to the best of your ability. And then you can adjust how you prepare and think about your test based on what kind of exam setup there is. now that we are in kind of online learning, you might be encountering setups for exams that you haven't taken before. So you can try to use visualization to practice what you might expect. So just imagining in your head what it will look like once you are taking the test, what kind of problems to expect, what kind of formatting to expect. That'll help just reduce anxiety related to maybe you've never taken a test like this before and it's just unfamiliar. So just making yourself familiar with the format. And also, if you use visualization, you can imagine more positive results to yourself taking the test. And that really challenges those catastrophic thinking patterns and behaviors where you might think, oh, this is new to me and I've never done anything before like this, so I'm just not going to be very good at it. But if you can imagine a result where you try this new thing and you actually are pretty good at it, it can challenge that anxious thinking pattern that you may have had before.
So we've learned a lot during this workshop. Now I want to take a moment for you to reflect. So what are 2 new testing strategies or tips that you're willing to try out before, during, or after your next exam? We supplied you with a worksheet on the next slide to kind of organize your thoughts. So on the next slide, it shows you little sections you can figure out the test date, and then plan out when you'll start studying, your study strategy, and then a relaxation technique that you're going to use after to kind of de-stress and work through those thought processes you learned.
Yeah, so the objectives that we went over today, and kind of the summary of the entire workshop, we learned about the different types of stress. Remember, eustress and distress. And then understanding symptoms of stress, hopefully your own symptoms, so you can recognize those and kind of change them if they're really bothering you. And then how to alleviate test anxiety before, during, and after an exam. And then does the format of the exam matter? Does it influence your test anxiety more? Does it time limit influence your test anxiety? Things like that.
Okay, so now that you've learned more about stress and distress in yourself, you might be able to better recognize it in yourself and others. So we have Cognito at-risk training, which is an online training module that can further those skills in both recognizing distress and also talking to others about it. So it's an important time right now to make connections and support each other as a community, and Cognito at-risk training can help you learn how to best support others around you. This also includes modules specific to concerns of LGBTQ individuals and student veterans. So there's a lot of different training modules that you can take to help learn more and support each other during this time.
So as we said earlier, we're the Counseling Center. And for right now, we're just going to give you our online resources. So for updated services, outreach, more videos like this for prevention programming, and even self-care strategies, follow us on our social media. So we have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and a YouTube account. Or also reach us by phone Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, and our number is listed below there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.